I'm Ryan Pack, and this is Soundtrack Your Life, where we talk to a guest about a soundtrack that they have a personal connection to. Today we have a special guest. We have Lou Barlow of Dinosaur Jr., Sebadoh, and the Folk Implosion. Welcome, Lou.
Hi.
And Lou, you actually have a podcast of your own now.
I do.
So why don't you tell us about Raw Impressions?
Yeah, I do a podcast with my wife that it's just kind of us talking and then me making, I don't know, I'm writing songs for it and doing a lot of 4-track stuff for it as well, for like the interstitial stuff. And yeah, so I don't know, I'm kind of trying to take the lo-fi stuff, like just I really want to include cassettes in it, but still with a kind of crisp, high fidelity, modern podcast sound for the talking and stuff. I don't know. I mean, it's an evolving project. I'm really into it.
Yeah, it's been cool, and you've had some guests on there, and you've debuted some new songs, and it's been quite a ride.
Yeah, I'm pretty into it.
So today we're going to talk about some of the soundtrack stuff that you've done. For the first episode of this podcast, we covered the kids soundtrack, which you had a major part in.
Yeah.
I read some of the interviews that you did when they did the vinyl reissues a few years ago. So I'm going to try to not repeat too many of the same questions, but I want to start things off with an email that my friend Dan sent me after he heard that kids episode.
Okay.
And he said that he was living in LA at the time and had a friend who worked in the industry that got him tickets to the premiere of Kids in Santa Monica. And all he was told is that it was a modern day Romeo and Juliet. And he took a date there and it did not go too well.
Yeah, it's a raw film. Yeah.
Yeah, so you actually you were very involved with the filming, with the music you were very involved, and they actually let you on set to watch them film scenes,
No, we
right?
didn't go on set, but we were invited into the process. We saw them actually casting the movie. I mean, we were around in
Oh,
the
that's
early
right. That's right.
part.
Sorry.
They brought us in before they'd even started filming. And yeah, I don't know. They brought us down to New York and or brought me down there, and then John and I don't know. We were really involved in it. We weren't involved in the actual filming, but we were sort of in pre-production and then in post, obviously, because we were doing the tunes.
Yeah, and so you guys picked some pretty obscure samples. Were these samples you guys were kicking around before they brought you in, or was it from watching some of the footage where you decided that you were going to go with the Left Bank and some of these other
Um,
the Silver Apples and stuff?
no, I don't know. We just really wanted to sample stuff. I mean, because we were like, heck, it's about the city, so let's sample. I think Harmony wanted us to do the opposite. I think he wanted us to go super lo-fi. Just like kind of he wanted to go more in my solo 4-track direction, that he was into because he liked that juxtaposition. So there's some of that in it, but we did also want to really, what we wanted to make it, we wanted to just introduce samples, I guess, because at that point we were really, we were really into rap and really into like R&B, and we thought it'd be interesting to just do our own, to just use that technology. The technology was fairly new then, and we just wanted to use that, and but we did use a ton of 4-track stuff. We used 4-track stuff. We recorded a lot of it on 4-track, you know.
And so I actually bought the single for Natural One, which became a top 40 hit. And the B-side
Hmm.
of that is a song called Cab Ride that I believe John wrote. And was that written for the film as well?
That was definitely written for the film. Because they're like, we need a song for the cab ride, and we're like, okay. They didn't use it, but because they used, I can't remember what they ended up using. They used some sort of classic jazz song in it that Larry Clark was really attached to. So they didn't use our cab ride, but we tried.
Okay. Yeah, because I've been. It doesn't sound like the other songs that you guys did for the soundtrack, so I wasn't absolutely sure.
No, we did it. I mean, John played sax, and we did it in the studio. We did it with everything else.
And so the supervisor of the soundtrack is Randall Poster, who, I mean, I think everyone kind of knows him now as like the Wes Anderson guy.
Yeah, I mean, yes, he's tops in his field. I mean, he was incredibly hands on. Really drew us into the project. Really followed up on stuff. Really enabled us in an amazing way. And they seemed to like us too, like personally. So that was nice. And we just had a lot of dinners with them. And he came to the studio once. And yeah, he was really good. And I was not surprised at all that he just continued to move forward and do great work. And still does.
Yeah, and he was the soundtrack supervisor for A Life Less Ordinary, which also has a folk implosion song.
Is that true? Wow. Okay. I forgot about that. I think, yeah. So that was before we worked with him for the kids soundtrack. I think.
Oh, okay. So I didn't know if he was a fan or, I mean, clearly he likes using you.
Well, we were really brought into it by I was Harmony Korine. He he approached me. He wrote me letters. I mean, he wrote me several letters, just like, I'm going to make this movie and it's going to be amazing and I want your music in it. And then I was working with John at that point, and John was we had a really I don't know we had a very our collaboration then was just really working for me. So I was like, okay, I'll do it, but I'm going to bring my friend John into it because I think I'll be better able to really crawl into the film, the script, and John and I. He's John is a percussionist. I mean, he's an amazing guitar player and percussionist. But we just, I don't know. We would the two of us together. I just thought it was like a really. I just really wanted it to be the two of us, and that's what
Right, and
happened.
there's also a previously released Sebadoh song on the soundtrack and a song with Deluxe Folk Implosion, which is yourself and John with Bob Fay's Deluxe project, right?
Yep, exactly. Yep. I just wanted to bring everything in that I was working on that I was really exciting me at the moment.
Yeah, it's really cool. And as far as Deluxe Folk Implosion goes, the only other song that I know of that you guys have is the I'm Just a Bill cover from the Schoolhouse Rocks
Yeah, we
compilation.
actually we actually released a we self-released an LP like maybe like 7 years ago. We
Oh,
because
really?
we did do yeah we did do one other than the session we did for Daddy Never Understood. We did do and the session for I'm Just a Bill. We also did a session like a day session where we recorded like I can't remember like 13 or 14 songs, and so we've self-released that.
Oh, cool.
And I have a yeah.
Well, I will probably hunt that down shortly.
Yeah, look it up. It's out there.
Oh, and I also wanted to add that my friend used to use Never Gonna Stop the Flow in his DJ sets in the 90s.
Nice.
I'm
I
sure
like
he'll,
that one.
yeah, I'm sure he would want to make sure I pass that along to you.
Mm.
So this is not on a soundtrack, but there was a compilation, I think, coming out around this time called Lounge Acts.
Yeah.
And you
Yep.
got there's a Sebadoh song on there, but I believe it's written by you and John.
Yeah, that's whole hog. Yeah, that's Seb and I were doing that DFI song for Deluxe Folk Implosion song for Encores, and so we recorded it and as Sebadoh and put it on that compilation.
Okay, okay. Because I was like, I think that's like the only like Sebadoh song that John has a writing credit on that I know of.
Oh yeah, yep, for sure.
So I was like, oh, that's cool. And I think Jason sings it.
No, I sing it,
Oh,
but
you sing it?
yep.
It's a live version though, right?
No, I don't. Is it? No, it's not a live version. It's. I mean, it was in the studio. I believe I did. I believe I overdubbed the vocals.
Oh, well, it sounds very spontaneous, like it's a live version in a good way.
Yeah, yeah, that was the intention.
Yeah, I didn't get to catch you guys in '96, so I wasn't seeing
Yeah,
that encore. But
yeah,
but these are just. But I've had that question since like 1996.
yeah. I mean, it was just all of that stuff was happening concurrently. It was like Sebadoh had done Bake Sale, uh, pretty much. I think it was all right on the heels of each other. Like it was like we did. John and I did Take a Look Inside, and then right after that, I did Bake Sale, and then after that, John and I went into the kids soundtrack stuff. It was a really fertile period, you know.
And then Harmacy came.
Then Harmacy came after that. Yeah, but that was Harmacy was being recorded like right as Natural One was becoming a hit, which was incredibly awkward. Looking back on it, it was really we had set up the session for Harmacy with Wally Gagel was the assistant to our main engineer for the record, who was Tim O'Hare, who had recorded Bake Sale. He was at the helm for Harmacy as well, but in the meantime, his assistant was the one who produced and actually co-wrote Natural One with John and I. And like, and when we were in the studio with Sebadoh, like, Natural One, the video was on TV, and it was just, I really wanted it to not be strange, and I didn't. It's actually taken me probably this long to just acknowledge that it was incredibly uncomfortable because it created so much tension between our two engineers. It created tension within the band. It was like, because I had this song taking off. I mean, like literally, like just becoming an actual top 40 hit. And I really just wanted to record the next Sebadoh record because Folk Implosion was a studio project, really. I mean, we did play live a bit, but I mean, it was nothing that we were going to pursue as a band, as a normal band. Like Sebadoh was my bread and butter, and it was unfortunate. you know.
Yeah, it seems like everything is kind of worked out now.
Yeah. Yeah, it's all is what it is, It's all good.
And Wally's had quite a career too.
Yeah, I mean, Wally really took what happened with Natural One and kind of ran with it. It had a different effect on John and I. I think John and I, like, we ended up imploding, the two of us in our own ways, on the heels of that when we did a one part lullaby. Actually, we did Dare to Be Surprised, then one part lullaby, all sort of in the shadow of Natural One. And, by 1999, we just couldn't really sustain. It just started a long, kind of very dark period.
But you guys were getting picked up on soundtracks pretty often on the heels of Natural One. Like I mentioned Life Less Ordinary, which I don't
That
know
was
if it.
before.
Oh, was that
That
before?
was
I just know the movie came out after Kids.
Yeah, it was before because the mix of that song "Kingdom of Lies" on the Life Less Ordinary soundtrack is is an early mix of it. Actually, it's not complete. We ended up sort of completing it for one part lullaby. The version that appeared on Life Less Ordinary is an early version.
Yeah, I did notice that those are not the same version from.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay. And then you have Free to Go on the American Beauty soundtrack, and that is on One Part Lullaby as well.
yeah. They threw that up there, and then I guess years later, it showed up on, like, what is it? What is that film? It's like Eternal Sunshine of the. Oh no, God, sorry. I remember one of the songs off of One Part Lullaby ended up in a soundtrack like years later, and it took me totally by surprise because I had totally forgotten. What happens with film soundtracks often is that you sign off on it, you're like, okay, and then just, uh, I mean, time passes and you forget that I mean, it kind of happens now. Sebadoh's got a bunch of, gets placements here and there, and I totally forget, and then like that one of our songs from Bake Sale popped up on the new Halloween movie. And I was
Oh
like,
wow.
I didn't even remember. Like, I was like, when did I even like okay that? I mean, just because films take so long to produce,
Right.
and the nuts and bolts of it are pretty complicated, and things just really get drawn out. And then by the time it actually shows up, it's like I forgot, I had no idea, you know. And that actually, there's been a recent Netflix thing that had Natural One in it and Flame by Sebadoh, and I don't. I was like, people were like, "Hey, they're in this." I'm like, I don't remember. I mean, I okay almost anything. I okay anything that comes across my in my inbox. It's like if you want to use the song, that's great. I mean, it's really that kind of stuff is how I survive. Really, it's the thing that like it's always the X factor that gets me through a year. It's like, oh my, thank God. I mean, we it's like, oh, I got $5,000 for this, or I mean that kind of stuff. Just it's always a surprise, and it's always like um, pretty crucial, you know.
Right. And do you feel like the acceptance of that has kind of changed since the 90s where like now it's like, well, obviously you have to do that, where in the 90s it was like, oh, sell out.
Oh, I never thought that way. I don't. I've never had any problem with any of my music being used anywhere. It's like, go for it. I mean, I don't. I mean, I'm sure there would be notable exceptions, or things that I absolutely would not agree to. But in general, everything is relatively like, uh, yeah, it's just like, oh, you want to use that? Great, please. You know.
Right. Yeah, I think I saw Weird by Sebadoh pop up in like a wrestling documentary.
Yeah, that might be the case. Yeah, I mean, I'm not hard to. I mean, it's not hard to get a. There's not a whole lot of like negotiations going on. It's like, oh, $750, great. I don't care. That's good. Take it, take it, use it, please. Just get the stuff. I mean, that's one thing that I love. I love film soundtracks for that. Is like, I mean, you discover music that way. You're like, what is that?
Yeah.
It's just, and I like being part of this big random. I mean, I just love the idea of people who've never thought to listen to my stuff, never heard it, never they're like they would never be in the like I like the idea of people just random people just hearing stuff and being like, what is that? So
How did it feel to be part of like a movie that won like film of the year at the Oscars? Best Picture.
which one was that?
American Beauty, right? Didn't it win Best Picture? I think it did.
Oh, we weren't even in the song wasn't in the movie. That was back in the 90s. I'll tell you the difference in the 90s was that they would stack the soundtracks with songs that were not in the movie.
Right. And they would say it's like inspired by.
It was a label. I mean, then it's not even inspired by it. It's just like it was a label ploy. It was just part of like promotions. It was just label politics. It was them trying to like promote acts, and yeah, it had nothing to do like the song is not in the movie. It's on the soundtrack. That was the case with a lot of things back then. So that was the 90s.
I was gonna say a movie that you are in is Laurel Canyon,
Yeah.
and
Yep.
you play some Sparkle Horse covers of that.
Yep. Yep. That was a deeply humbling experience. That's all I had never been in a movie before, and I'd never been on a movie set even, and I I realized I was so terrible at it that it was. I had a lot of realizations, and I was like, wow, no wonder movie stars make the money they make, and like this is I just a lot of things, and it was also humbling because I really did actually appeal. I was hoping that they would use because it was the new folk implosion at the time, but I was like, maybe they could use one of our songs, and it's like, no, you're doing Sparkle Horse cast-offs, and I was like, oh, it was like, it was tough. We went into the studio and like recording those songs for the movie was just one of, I mean, the songs were very simple, but the recording process was incredibly protracted. And then the guy that was the lead singer in our band was like this very confident actor guy. And the first day on the set, he was just like sitting at this table with this 12, I think a 12 string guitar, and played this absolutely like immaculate cover of Ride My Llama by Neil Young, and just looking around the room. And I'm like, oh my God, this is like so out of my league. I can't even, I could just barely, I was just, it was mortifying. You know, like it was, yeah, just the trying to do the lines, and then just really, and I mean, the atmosphere was really cool. The people that actually work on films, you know, like the lighting people, the sound people, like they're really, like the people that were working that film were incredibly cool. Like, you know, like you would see a boom operator with like a Dead Moon shirt on, and everybody was so cool. Like all the people working on it. And we were working with Frances McDormand, and she was like amazing, like as nice as you would ever want her to be. And but it was just, I was so out of my depth, and I made some pathetic appeals to the director to use some songs of mine. I even gave her like a CDR or whatever, some songs, and it was just like, she was just came back to me like, hey, do you know Elliott Smith? And I'm like, I do. So I mean, like, she was like super psyched to get Elliott Smith at the wrap up party, and I got Elliott Smith to the wrap up party, and that was my greatest contribution to the filming. It's like the director got to meet Elliot, and Elliot was in a terrible way at that point too, and it was, and you know, I've never been asked to score a film. Actually, since kids, I was never really asked to score a film, or and yeah, and then my actual experience of being in a film, I was like, this is so, yeah, I don't know. That was a while ago.
Do you remember how you got brought into Laurel Canyon?
Well, they needed the producer of the film. One of the producers of the film was a huge Folk Implosion fan, and had really loved the One Part Lullaby record. And at that point, the band was myself and Russ Pollard from Sebadoh and Ahmad Wasif. And Russ and Ahmad are like really good looking guys, like, and they were younger. They're good, but younger than me. Like, I think they're both maybe like 15 years, 10, 15 years younger than me. And at that point, they were both looked really good. And we looked good as a band. At least my bandmates were pretty confident. And I think we made we did a screen test or whatever, and they got us into it. But it was this guy Scott Ferguson, who was a producer of the movie, who was a Folk Implosion fan, and he got us to audition, and we got the parts.
Oh, cool. Um, I interviewed Craig Wedren last year. He scored the film. He's from Shudder to Think.
Yeah, yep, he was around. Yep, yep. Another confident, really super confident guy. I was like, Beck's bass player was like hanging out. He was on set too, and I don't know, and he was incredibly confident. Justin Meldal Johnson.
Oh yeah, and
Uh,
I think
yeah,
Joey
and like, and
Waronker was there too.
I didn't meet him. I've always heard of. I At one point during the recording of Harmacy, Tim O'Hare, our producer, was like insisting that I fire our drummer and get Joey Warnaker to record the record. And I couldn't do it. I was like, I can't fire my friend.
Right.
He reduced Tim like reduced me to tears one night. He's like, these songs are like dead in the water unless you get a new drummer. And I was like, oh God, you're right, you know. And I was just drinking and crying, and he's telling me that we're going to get Joey Warnaker on the phone, and we're going to transform this record into like something, you know, viable. And And I was like, okay. And then, but the next day I woke up and I'm like, I can't fire my friend and get Joey Warnicker to play this record. But I didn't see Joey.
Oh, you didn't see Joey.
No. Daniel Lenoir was on set on the last day. There was a big party scene at the last day, and uh, it's in the movie. But Daniel Lenoir was there. That was a trip. And the Sparkle Horse guy was there too. He showed up. Um, yeah. And Frances McDormand. We were in the Chateau Marmont, and Frances McDormand was playing Tom Waits and being wonderful. And yeah.
I was hoping that you had a more positive experience from that, but I mean,
Well, I mean,
Hollywood is Hollywood.
it's not a negative. I mean, it's totally my own thing. I mean, the people that I met through that. I mean, I gained so much respect for the movie making process. Not that I ever thought it was easy, or it's just that it's you don't know until you actually live and experience something on that scale. And doing it was like it was very impressive. And then also just considering, Frances McDormand, Christian Bale, like these are like real. They were, it was amazing to watch those people work and to just be a fly on the wall. I would have preferred to be a fly on the wall rather than ever having the lights on me. That was that was tough. So it was not a bad experience by any means. It was an incredibly textured, interesting experience, but I just wish I was in a better spot when we did it.
Yeah, I'm surprised that I guess you didn't really you didn't really cross paths with like Craig Wedren when you guys were both you know
I, I
playing.
saw him. We because he was also in the party scene, I think. So he was around, and he was like, yeah, he was like, he was going to score the film, and like I said, I had made some appeals to the director, and she was just like, kind of gave me like, I mean, she wasn't a fan, so it was like I didn't. And then I guess like just in the wake of that, it was kind of a thing like where the kids soundtrack was such a surprise and so cool and so well received, and I think because nothing had really happened on the heels of that, like I was never asked to do another one again, and then I was sort of in Laurel Canyon in that thing, and I just realized that the caliber of talent that was really doing that kind of work, like Craig and Justin Meldal Johnson, and that they were so far superior to me that I understood why. And it was just that's why I said it was really humbling. It was just a very humbling experience.
I mean, I think that you should be doing more movies. I think the kid soundtrack is great, and I've been a fan of your work for like 30 years now.
Yeah, we loved scoring the film, and I really liked the way I thought that the texture, like lo-fi textures, came off incredibly well. I just thought that something that was more. I think anything. I think it would be really interesting to bring that approach to some other project. It would be an interesting way to do it, and with that kind of like combination of textures. And but there's all kinds of incredibly brilliant people who score films out there. And again, it's also like it's also a craft that it's also a very it's a craft, and it has its own rules, and it has its own methods, and I would have to learn how to do that. you know.
Yeah, I mean, I guess in the '90s, and I think Craig commented on this as well. In the '90s, being from your background, being a rock musician, like it was still kind of like, oh, I don't know if you can do this. But I feel like
Yeah.
over the past like 10, 15 years, it's become much more of a you've seen your Trents and your Johnny Greenwoods and
Oh yeah. Oh
so
yeah.
hopefully someone will be like, oh yeah, let's get those kids guys because that was a
Yeah.
great soundtrack.
Yeah. No, I mean it's cool. Like just working on, like, I think with the podcast that I'm doing a lot of like just textural stuff with the 4 track to kind of fill in the gaps. I mean, I've only started to do it, it's pretty exciting because I've wanted to do that. I really want to, because I don't want to, it's like I want to do something that's not just completely song based. You know what I mean? I think as this sort of twilight of my career is approaching and I'm like kind of doing stuff, I would love to do things that were more textural and more collage like. And I think the podcast, doing a podcast is probably the most logical step for me right now, is to do something that's like, because it reminds me of, freeform radio, which I grew up on freeform college radio. So anyway.
Yeah, and I thought it was really cool that I think I emailed you just the other day. I was watching Little America on Apple TV, and I all of a sudden I hear the song, and it's so familiar, and it was
Yeah.
Insinuation by the Folk
Well,
Implosion.
that's another one I have. I'm like, how did that happen? I'm like, oh, okay.
And it was this story about this Korean American family in the Midwest.
Right.
And I was just
Oh,
like,
okay.
"Oh my gosh, this is like speaking to me right now." Like tomorrow, I'm emailing Lou Barlow and being like, "Hey, let's get you on the
Oh, that's
podcast."
cool. That's awesome.
But like people are obviously still listening to your music if they're licensing songs that are 25 years old.
Yeah, I mean, I always worry. I'm like, when's the next generation? I mean, like, I think there's kind of a sweet spot right now for '90s stuff. Although I do kind of wonder, though, maybe it's just like everything is happening all at once now. There's not necessarily like there is a nostalgia for the '90s, but there's also a nostalgia for the '80s, and there's also a nostalgia for at some point the aughts will be in there too. And so I don't know. I don't know whether I have a tendency to go like, well, it's going to stop at any time. Like any licensing I get, I'm like, this is the last one. There can't be enough. No one's going to ask for a full, another Sebadoh song, right? And I'm like, and then another request will come in, and I mean, and we don't solicit anybody for these requests. They're all from the creators, which is really cool, because people do spend a lot of time investing and getting their pushing their songs on people.
Yeah.
We have no, I mean, I'm unmanaged, totally free floating, and the stuff just kind of comes, which is cool.
So last year you released the first Folk Implosion single in with John in like 20 years, right?
Oh yeah, at least 20 years. I mean, was it 20? Yeah, it would be 20. It would be yes. Yeah. Yep.
And so you guys are working on new stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. We're like, he's been here a couple of times. I've been down to Durham a couple of times. I mean, it's a little frustrating because we are working separately quite a bit, which is not my. I mean, I would. I mean, if we lived in the same town, it would be fantastic because we would get together. We would do like what we did in Boston. We'd get together once a week and just have a total mind meld, you know, brainstorming session every week. And now it's kind of disjointed. And I mean, the single took us a really long time to put together, but I was really pleased with the results. But it took a long time. And right now we're working on 11 songs that are all not finished. They're all like, I mean, I don't know how it's going to all come together. I just know it's going to come together. I don't know how, but it will.
And are you guys going to call up Wally, or do you think or is this just going to be you
No,
and John?
we're working with this. We're working with a producer that John's been working with over the last decade or so. This guy Scott Salter, who's based in Durham, and he's a really cool, really inventive producer. Like he's done a lot of notably he's done like a Superchunk record. He's done rock records, but his I think his real he's really interested in like remixes and really fucking with music and ambient stuff. And uh, so I think we've we've got our guy. You know, we've got. I think because it's John and I think one thing that we do, one thread that we want to make sure is going that it's going through this stuff is just staying quirky and staying kind of unpredictable a little bit, and embracing embracing all kinds of things, embracing like exotic instruments, embracing like real. I mean, like I really want to embrace like the just really stretching my vocal limit and really I want to really become like I really want to be. I really feel like the most successful folk implosion stuff is where I really stepped into kind of roles when I sang the songs and really moved outside of like that kind of indie rock context, and that's something that always has always excited me about working with John, is we just kind of push each other in unexpected directions, and that's what's happening with this record actually. So
So obviously, you guys have different songs at different stages, but is there are you guys gonna tour it, or are you gonna kind of keep Folk Implosions more of like a studio sort of project?
I'm really not sure. I mean, I think when we did do this single, we did this. We it's sort of. I mean, we put out the single ourselves, um, and we kind of imagined that it. I mean, I'm a little embarrassed to say, well, we were kind of imagining like we would do that, and then we'd send it to the labels that we had worked with, and that they would just almost unconditionally accept us and give us a nice recording budget, and we would be able. But it's like the opposite was true. Like we really didn't. Uh, so we're in the position now of having to self fund the record, and then which is totally fine. And John has a job, and 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 he's really John is really. It's been a wonderful reunion because John is like really we're like totally. I think when we started the band, I was sort of the older guy that had more experience, and I was kind of dragging John into the process a little bit. But now we're totally equals. I mean, we're just we're only that the 5 years difference between our ages meant a lot more,
Hmm.
you know,
Yeah.
in the '90s. I mean, you know being 30 and him being 25 meant a lot, was a lot more of an intense age difference. But now it's like I'm 56 and he's 50, and it's like we're just equals, so
Yeah.
that's like a pretty cool thing about what's going on with this the new beginning. It's like we're kind of really entering it as equals, and John has actually learned so much about the recording process, has so much gear, is like he's obsessed with like textures and like and it's great because I'm still just very involved in like trying to grow as a songwriter and a singer, so it's really good. But like I said, I mean I mean it was again a humbling thing. It was like I thought it was like, oh man, people are be really excited for a Folk Implosion project, and then they're like, nope.
I'm
like we're like,
really excited.
I think there are people excited. I know the fans are excited. We're excited. Um, but it's like also it's like it is a reminder that the landscape has changed. So and that we do, and it's just like what I do with my solo stuff and what I do now and how I move. It's like, man, you figure out new ways to move as things change. You change. It's like me doing a podcast. It's like, what do I do? It's like, it just seems like that's what I'm going to do now. That's what you do. That's how you. It's like it's a part of the whole. Like you have to actually become. I mean, I think the point is to become more diverse in what you do and become more adventurous. And doing a podcast is definitely that. For me, and my vision of what I'm moving towards in the podcast realm is, I'm moving towards what like a sort of like an ideal combination of like collage and songs and speaking and stories telling, so um, that that's it's all it's you kind of have to be, it's like you get humbled, and then you go, okay, and then what do I got to do, like what how do we move from here? And I'm really fortunate that John's come back into my life at this point too, because I think it's our basic spirit that we had initially, which was like this kind of really cool, adventurous, and sort of almost like stylistically open, and and also with the idea of like making music that is like generous, that gives more and is accessible, yet has enough little things in it that like kind of keeps the brain firing.
It's funny because, like, as you were saying earlier about how, you're not sure where, the next licensing thing is going to come from. Like, I just feel like a lot of these songs that you've written just keep on finding new life. I remember listening to sports radio, out of all things, in Los
Yeah,
Angeles
yeah,
a couple years ago, and they were just introducing some former baseball player, and these two guys who run the sports radio show at 5 rush hour on one
yeah.
of the big stations was like, "Oh, he's the natural one," and they started playing the folk implosion.
No way. I love it.
And I was just like, I was probably like the only person listening at the time that was like, "That's amazing that they're
It is
pulling that
amazing.
song in like
That's amazing.
2017."
Oh my God. I mean, yeah, yeah. I think the fact that we did sort of touch, that we did kind of skim pop culture at that point, it was like, it's pretty cool. I mean, I remember being shocked. I was watching TV, like it was probably in the late 90s, but there was this inspirational speaker, Tony Robbins, who would have these late night, hour long specials that he would do. And it starts out, and like he walks out onto stage to like a karaoke version of Natural One, and I'm like, oh my God. Tony Robbins, like he's like this very tall man with a big smile, and I'm like, Tony Robbins coming out to like some strange version of this song that John and I wrote. I mean, it was cool,
Yeah, it's
it's
funny. Like,
funny.
the kid soundtrack isn't on Spotify, so there's like these imposter versions of Natural One that you can look up on Spotify.
Yeah, I think Wally Gagel made one of those,
Oh,
I
really?
believe. Yeah. He was always Wally. I think is he was the most he's the most sort of engaged and sort of uh, connected person, like compared to John and I. Uh, and he was very frustrated by how we couldn't really figure out who owned the rights for the songs, and we couldn't agree. I mean, it was like this. So Wally just went ahead and like did his own version of it. But it's funny.
Well, I'm excited about what you've got. I mean, whichever project you're working on, I'm always excited about it. Had a
Oh,
really great
thanks.
time at your backyard show in San Clemente that you did a couple years ago.
Oh, nice. Oh, right. Oh, yeah. The skater's house.
Yeah, and you did play Natural One there.
Did I? I play it. If people request it, I'll play it for sure. It's fun.
That was a thrill for me. Um,
Awesome.
yeah, very cool. I'm guessing Jason's going to be doing some fiery furnaces things. Jason and Bob.
I don't know what they're doing. Bob lives down in Florida now. I don't know what Jason's doing. I just got a licensing request for one of his songs. So I sent him I forwarded it to him, and I haven't heard whether he bit or not. But yeah, somebody wanted to use Nothing Like You from the Harmacy LP.
Oh, cool.
So hopefully he followed up on that so he can get that tune out there again. But
Well, I hope this episode finds you some new fans, or at least reminds people that they should go back and listen to their favorite Sebadoh or
yeah,
Dino or
check out my podcast with my wife, and like we do a sort of main episode on Wednesdays, and then every Monday there's like a music related episode that's a little bit shorter, but that I play I'm starting to play requests from people, and I'm starting to write song. I'm I'm on a path now to like write a new song every week for it, and record it on 4 track. And so the first kind of brand new 4 track song, complete, more or less completed. I mean, very quickly done. So I just love the idea of, I don't care. I just want to put stuff out, make it free. It's just free. It's like, it's off the cuff. It's just, we're just moving on. It's like, you're doing a podcast. You know what this is like. I mean, you're very prolific. You're what, like 60 episodes in or so. It's like, I just love this idea of just bam, 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 just putting just information, music, stories, just a constant flow of it. And rather than, because when you're, as an artist, it's like it's like, oh, I'm going to make a record, and here's the record, and you work so long and you craft it, and then you put it into the world, and it just disappears, and it's like, did it? But when, I just love the immediacy. What I've always wanted to regain was the immediacy of like recording a cassette and then selling it at the local record store for $1. It's like, that's just making everything just doing it and putting it out and moving on, and like podcasting, I think, is a really amazing opportunity to just tap into a flow. I just love I love the flow of what the sort of podcast community is. I love the flow of information and music and ideas. I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, and I actually do think it suits you pretty well. I mean, I feel like you are very prolific. You are always
I
working on something.
I and I can be, and it's coming back. I think it's really coming back, and it's also, the podcast is good for me too, because it actually, like, just like back in the day, I was describing just these constantly. It was like Sebadoh, folk implosion, solo, Sebadoh. I mean, like, it's the more that I did, that actually the better things got. I mean, and it kind of like peaked. It peaked with the folk implosion when John and I. It was like, and that was because I wasn't spreading myself too thin. It was actually just that the more you create, the better it can get. The better that it can get. You don't have to be like so precious about every little nugget that you do. You can just let it go, and and just get into. I mean, there is a flow. There's a flow, and you can get into it and make better stuff.
It's like you're firing on all cylinders, and kind of
Yeah, it's like
sharpening your skills as you're going along.
yeah, I'm like, I mean, just starting a podcast and having no idea. I was just like, okay. I mean, I knew I knew it was daunting, and I didn't really want to do it because I knew it would take me over, and it absolutely has. But it's a lot more fun than I had anticipated. So,
Well, congratulations on starting your podcast, and
yeah.
I'm glad that you're having fun with it.
Oh yeah, yeah. Seems like most people who are doing podcasts kind of seem to be having fun with it, so that's cool.
Well, if you don't have fun with it, you're going to burn out, and you're going to not have
You're
a
gonna burn
podcast
out
anymore.
so fucking quick. Yeah. So,
But yeah, thank you so much for doing this.
no
And
worries.
when I started this podcast and we did a kids episode, my friend goes, you should email Lou and see if he'll do the podcast. And I was like, I got to build this thing up so Lou thinks I'm legitimate.
I know my wife was like, she wants me to. I mean, I know a fair amount of people just over the years, musicians, and she was like, we got to talk to Wayne Coyne, and I'm like, let's hold on. We got to. I said exactly what you just said. I was like, we got to build this up first. We got to build this up.
Well, when you get Wayne, I'll be listening when you're ready. Thanks again to Lou Barlow for coming on the podcast. You can find Lou Barlow on Twitter at @TheLouBarlow and on Instagram @LouBarlow. You can also check out Raw Impressions wherever you listen to podcasts. You can find us on Twitter at soundtrack_your and on Instagram at soundtrackcast. We are also on Patreon at patreon.com/soundtrackyourlife. You can find all of this in our show notes, and we'll see you next time.